feel like we've been able to persuade some of the, as I said, the smartest investors in legal technology that this marketplace is the way of the future and the way that corporations are going to be making outside counsel hiring decisions.
Today on LawNext, a conversation with the two founders of Priori Legal, a marketplace for in-house legal teams to find and hire outside counsel, which today announced a $6.3 million Series A financing. I'm joined today by Basha Rubin, CEO, and Mirra Levitt, Chief Product Officer, and we'll talk about this news and what it means for the company and the market. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. Mirra's Case is the robust practice management solution specifically tailored to workers' comp, personal injury, and criminal law. See how Mirra's Case can be tailor-made to fit your firm at mirrascase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. Thanks for your sponsorship and thanks for helping to make this show possible. Now on to our interview with Basha Rubin and Mirra Levitt. Basha and Mirra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us, Bob.
We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And Basha, this is a return appearance. You were just on this show barely a month ago, if that. But that was to come on and talk about Lex Fusion, a new company that was getting launched at that point, and your or Priori's participation in that. But today we get to focus on Priori and talk a little bit more about your company. So Basha, let me start with you. You've announced today this news that you've raised $6.3 million in Series A financing. What does this mean for your company?
We're thrilled. Ever since we've been growing rapidly, and that growth has only been accelerated during the pandemic, when legal departments are increasingly tasked with accomplishing more for less, and as a result, they're turning to Priori to help them accomplish those goals. In fact, our client spend through the platform has increased over 200% in the past year. So we're seeing a huge amount of traction with Fortune 500 companies and leading technology companies who see us as a way to unbundle their legal spend. So we've raised the money both to grow our product, but also to meet incoming demand that we've seen over the past 6 months. So we're very excited to be rapidly scaling the team and unveiling a whole suite of new product features over the next 6 to 12 months.
We can talk about more of all of that, but Mirra, what about from your perspective? What does this mean for you? What does this mean for the company, for the product?
Yeah, I mean, like Basha said, we've seen just incredible incoming demand. And, before the raise, we were really, everyone was pushing 500% to meet it, but we just didn't have the resources to be able to grow as quickly as we could. So what it means is being able to really execute on our vision and be able to deliver the product that people have been coming to us for.
So I think one of the things that stood out for me about the news is the group of investors who are behind this. Basha, can you talk about that a little bit? Can you talk about who some of these investors are and why it might be significant for your company?
Absolutely. We've been able to pull together a really exciting consortium of really the smartest investors in legal tech from our perspective. So it's Hearst Corporation, who has been a significant client of Priori's through their in-house legal department. It's Oryx Legal Technology Fund, Mindset Ventures, whose partner Jules Miller is an experienced legal technology founder and operator. Bridge Investments, whose partner Mike Suchland is the former president of Thomson Reuters legal business, and Tim Steinert, who is the former general counsel of Alibaba, who came in as an angel. And we, alongside other angels and other venture investors as well. But not only are we thrilled to have $6.3 million in our coffers, but we also feel like we've been able to persuade some of the, as I said, the smartest investors in legal technology that this marketplace is the way of the future and the way that corporations are going to be making outside counsel hiring decisions.
Yeah, that's quite a lineup, and it's interesting to me that the Jules Miller and Mindset Ventures is among that group, because Jules is the former co-founder of Hire and Esquire, which is a somewhat similar model to what you're doing here.
That's definitely true. It is. Hire and Esquire is, was more of a staffing solution, which is different than what we're doing. But her background is going to be extremely beneficial to Priori, because she's thought about this space very in a very detailed way, and really believes that the marketplace model, knowing what she knows, is going to be the way to scale in the sort of unbundled legal services space.
Yeah, and I just jumping in on that, I think one of the things, in addition to all the other elements of the syndicate that we're excited about, it's just tremendously useful from a product perspective, having so many people with disparate, experiences and different understandings of the legal market and perspectives come together and say, we believe the marketplace is going to explode in the future, and being able to draw on all of those perspectives as we execute on that.
So you've both talked about the significance of this for the product and for the market. Describe for us what the product is, because we haven't really talked about that, and I mentioned it in my introduction. But Basha, why don't you tell us exactly what it is that Priori Legal does?
We're a global legal marketplace for in-house teams to find and hire a vetted network of attorneys at firms of all sizes. So to that end, we've built two things. One is that global vetted network of attorneys whom we vet using a proprietary data-driven vetting process we've developed that yields about a 10% admissions rate. And the second thing we've built is a technology platform that sits on top of that attorney network and aims to drive efficiency at every stage of the process of engaging with those attorneys, from initial RFP and bidding all the way through to billing and invoicing.
So in the press release that you put out today, you describe your company as disrupting the BigLaw model for Fortune 500 companies by using data and tech to unbundle legal services. So, Mirra, maybe could you unpack that for us a little bit? How does a vertical marketplace such as Priori disrupt BigLaw?
Yeah, I think first of all, I would say, I think we partner with in-house departments as well as law firms. And so it's not so much about disrupting, those firms themselves. It's about thinking differently about how people connect with talent and how people make decisions around talent. And so what we've been able to do is, using structured data, build a rapid way for clients to come to us and get a wide range of options for exactly what they need to do. So, somebody can come to us and say, I'm looking for a lawyer who has previously negotiated against X company, is barred in Y state, bills out between, A and B dollars per hour, and speaks Spanish. And we can have options for them, that meet all of those needs within a matter of hours. And it's just about thinking about what is right for every need, and thinking about how you bucket those needs, and, opening up the conversation so that it's not sort of what brand name will I be going with, but how can I meet this legal need in an optimized way that is right for my in-house department.
And you mentioned previously that this financing will let you further develop, iterate the product. How do you see this product evolving? Where do you want to develop it further?
So we are really excited to continue to use data to drive better outside counsel hiring decisions. And we've only scratched the surface of the types of data that we are deploying on the site, and plan during this next period to bolster that data, both from an attorney experience and expertise perspective, as well as from a pricing perspective. So in-house teams can make sure they're hiring the right lawyer at the right price every single time. Further, we're using machine learning to drive better outcomes, both in the attorney vetting process as well as in the matchmaking process for client proposals.
So maybe I'll put you on the spot with this question, but Basha, I found an article that you wrote on TechCrunch back in 2014, in which you said, fast forward and the law firm of the future is a marketplace. Thousands of lawyers connected through lean back-end infrastructure that handles administrative functions, driving pricing down and productivity up. Is that still part of your vision? You were really. It was a great quote. And is that still consistent with your vision? I mean, is the law firm of the future kind of defined by this marketplace model?
100%. And I think that we're seeing increasingly that legal services are going to be delivered and intermediated by a service that uses, that's able to aggregate and disseminate data. And I do think that the pandemic has created a lot of interest from in-house teams in thinking about how they can move away from business as usual in order to make outside counsel hiring decisions with more confidence, which needs to be done through a central aggregator.
I just want to jump in on that.
Yes,
I think
Mirra.
one point there that I want to make really clear is that one of the things we are excited about the marketplace is that it's sort of law firm structure agnostic. So, I think in 2014, and that quote, leads to some questions about, do we want to be doing a lot of like back office admin kind of thing for all the firms? And do we want people to be firmless and all of that? And I think very clearly, no. Our vision is focused on data and using that to assist in hiring decisions. And I think, one of the things we think is really exciting about a marketplace is that it can engage talented lawyers across the firm spectrum, people who are practicing, in traditional big law environments, people who have taken the boutique route, people who are practicing on their own, and provides a way for them to engage via their expertise rather than the structure through which they have chosen to deploy that expertise.
Right. So you're not getting into the infrastructure as much as you're getting into the role of helping them drive down pricing and drive up productivity. Exactly. Yeah, makes sense. And you both alluded to this, and it was kind of going to be my next question. But what has been the impact of the pandemic, of COVID-19, of the situation we all find ourselves in, on your business over the past 6 to 7 months, whatever it's been?
We've seen very strong growth over the past 6 to 7 months, and some of it obviously is part of the growth trajectory we were already on before COVID, but we've really seen it as a catalyst, particularly with some of the largest in-house departments, or the Fortune 50s of the world, where cost savings was always a nice to have. I mean, everyone likes saving money, basically across all areas of your life, but it wasn't the number one the number one top priority. And I mean, if you look at studies that have come out in the past 6 months that surveyed in-house departments, it bears out exactly what we're seeing, that cost savings has skyrocketed to the top of the priority list. And all of a sudden, in-house leads who knew about us but weren't in a hurry to buy are now all of a sudden in a hurry to buy, or at least understand what kind of value we can drive. And so that's one of the reasons that we raise this money, and one of the reasons that I think, as Mirra alluded to, our whole team is very excited to have the money to be able to hire more right now, because we have been so busy in the past 6 months that everybody is working around the clock.
We'll continue our conversation with Basha Rubin and Mirra Levitt in just a moment, but first, this message. Do you feel fatigued from bouncing between software and need one source of truth to help you manage your firm? Mirra's Case, a cloud-based legal practice management system that offers a fully integrated, HIPAA-compliant, and easy-to-use practice management platform, works for every law firm, regardless of size. See how Mirra's Case can be tailor-made to fit your firm at mirrascase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. Now back to my conversation with Basha Rubin and Mirra Levitt. So Basha and Mirra, the two of you met as students at Yale Law School. How did you get from law school to starting Priori?
Well, I went straight from Yale College to Yale Law School. This is Basha speaking. Yep. And while I was at Yale Law School, I'd always had somewhat entrepreneurial ambitions, and Mirra and I had begun talking about how vertical marketplaces were transforming other kinds of industries, and saw an opportunity to apply many of the same principles to law, but in a highly industry-specific way. And so after graduating, I decided that the time was right to begin working on Priori. We originally launched, the predecessor version of Priori, which was an SMB legal marketplace back in 2013, and have really had an extraordinary bird's eye view to watching how the industry has changed during that time. I think we told this story at Legal Geek last year, but when we were first working on the initial idea for Priori, we had someone tell us, a lawyer tell us, it was the stupidest idea he'd ever heard of in his entire life.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. And I was like, well, man, the stupidest idea you've heard in 50 years, I'll take that as an accomplishment. But, the industry has really changed. The understanding of these kinds of businesses have changed, and the receptivity to them have changed. So, I think, knock wood, we're in the right place at the right time right now. And I'll turn it over to Mirra, who had a slightly different journey to Priori.
Yeah, so I went from law school to Covington and Burling, where I was an M&A and venture associate. And I actually liked being a private practice lawyer, and I think Covington's just a fantastic firm. And I think I was in about as good a position as you could be in terms of happiness level at a law firm. But I was talking with Basha about the business at night, and also the more I talked to, the more I saw within the law firm, the more it became clear to me that some of our insights at the beginning around small business and how difficult and important it was to pick the right lawyer for the right matter and segment based on the risk level and the complexity level and the budget for each matter was actually a problem and a need that went, all the way through the corporate spectrum, right up into the Fortune 500. And the more we saw that, and the more I was working with Basha, it just became clear to me that this was something I wanted to build with 100% of my time and 100% of my brain. And so I left Covington and joined Basha, and the rest is history.
And your focus has changed over the years, hasn't it? I mean, you focused more or primarily, I think, on the SMB market when you first started out, and now it seems that you're focusing much more on the larger corporate market, the Fortune 500 market, even.
That's 100% correct, Bob. When we first launched, we were an SMB legal marketplace, and the segment of the market that we saw performing and growing were in-house teams. And we did some very hard looking at our numbers, as well as thinking about what we thought the future of the space was going to be, and we realized that the biggest business to build to start with was to focus on the legal needs of larger enterprises. And so we effectuated that pivot in 2016 and have never looked back.
I think the thing, though, that has been constant is, we launched this business because we were interested in helping people find the right lawyer for each matter every time. And that question of lawyer vetting and what information you need in order to make a outside counsel decision every time is one that we have remained interested in, and was, one of the reasons why, as an initial matter, this wasn't a great fit for an SMB business, because that optimization question was a less data-rich question for SMBs, I think, than it is for larger corporations. And so the solution we were building actually was a much better fit farther up market.
The two of you are something that remains unusual in legal tech, which are women founders of companies. There's still a relatively small percentage of women who have founded legal tech companies, and probably a much smaller percentage of pairs of founders who are both women in legal tech. Did you feel that being women entrepreneurs in this industry, it presented obstacles of any kind that men might not have encountered?
I don't know that I think this is specific to legal tech, but I certainly think that fundraising as to women is challenging in a way that, and particularly fundraising, I should say, for any kind of enterprise B2B company as to women is profoundly challenging in a way that has been widely recognized, but our lived experience certainly bears that out. Mirra, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two kinds of answers here, and both of them are important, right? We've had a tremendous support network by virtue of being who we are, right? So we've developed fantastic mentors that, and those mentorship relationships aren't because we're women, it's just because we've built wonderful connections with people who've taken the time to really help us get to the next stage. And I worry a little in these answers that you denigrate those really important relationships by talking about some of the other harder things. Mm-hmm. But I think being upfront about the harder things is important, just so that people who are experiencing those harder things don't feel alone. And so there's certainly, both of us are women. We're also both moms. And we're not particularly interested in hiding the fact that we're moms. So there's definitely moments and conversations where they don't go in the way that you might expect. And obviously you don't know the counterfactual, but there's a great HBR article about some of the questions that women founders get asked versus non-female founders. Mm-hmm. And we, in certain cases have found that to be pretty accurate.
So it's not a matter of sort of overt discrimination, perhaps, or bias, but more the kind of subtle kind of sexist assumptions that certain financiers might have.
I think that's exactly right. I think it's what their model of successful business person looks like, and I think those models are still overwhelmingly male. We were just talking about this morning, but we had an investor who told us, the business makes sense and your numbers are really strong, but you just don't make my spidey sense tingle, which first of all is gross, But second of all, I think really cuts to the heart of what I think is going on, which is that we don't look like the leaders they expect, and not because we're not professional, not because we're not put together, but just because the archetype is male. And, 2.2% of venture capital dollars went to female-founded companies, which I don't believe accounts for whether there is an additional male founder as part of the equation. And if I were wagering, I would say companies with 2 female founders fare worse. And then, added to that, and not in any way to cast any aspersions, many of those dollars go to businesses that are focused on female consumers and families, which is wonderful. And I only want to purchase from female-founded startups that sell to female consumers as a female consumer myself. But when you look at the percentage of, the number of female founders, and we have, many who we've been lucky to become friends with and who are mentors to us, who have built large enterprise technology companies that are well funded, it's a really small number. And I certainly don't think it's any form of overt sexism, but something much more insidious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it is, you're hearing us sort of hedge a little back and forth. And that's because, neither one of us in our lives does a lot of sort of blaming of external factors, right? And I, succeeded at Goldman Sachs. I succeeded at Covington. I obviously have been in a lot of places where, there weren't a ton of women in leadership roles. So I think it's been hard for us to step back and figure out exactly how much of a factor it is. But I think when you look at the numbers, particularly around enterprise tech, there's, something there.
Yeah, I just think it's useful to talk about it, even though everybody's experience varies. But I've had a couple of times on this show Kristen Sonde of Paladin, who's done some sort of informal research into this, and I know she's been trying to update her numbers. But the last time she did research on this was in 2018, when she found that just roughly 14% of legal tech founders were women. I don't, last time I asked her about it, didn't look like the numbers are going to have changed all that much. So, and then, there's issues with regard to founders who are people of color. There's a whole other set of numbers. So, it's something that's good to talk about, even though people's experience differs, because I think the more we talk about it, the more people are aware of it, and the more likely it is to change. So.
100%. We really appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah. Going back to your business, I wanted to ask, again, we talked about the fact that you're focused more heavily on the larger corporate market these days. How do legal departments use you?
They use us as a single source solution for a wide range of different outside counsel hiring needs. So it's everything from on-demand expertise, which can be looking for local counsel, looking for cost savings versus traditional firm solutions, where we see a lot of traction, particularly in IP, M&A, and litigation, looking for some form of specific experience, such as having negotiated a particular software contract against a particular software vendor, or having appeared in front of a judge in a certain kind of case, and then finally, still within that first bucket of on-demand expertise, looking to drive D&I outcomes in terms of either specific attorneys or percentage ownership of firms by diverse and female attorneys, and then bucket 2 is overflow support style work and or leave-in headcount coverage.
Yeah. From what I hear you saying, then the primary advantages are either specific expertise that they might need to bring in for a specific project, or staffing flexibility or elasticity to cover for ebbs and flows in their own internal staffing.
Absolutely, as being able to drive efficiency in the process of finding the right attorney, having a bidding process for work to drive prices down, and then I think the final thing that we haven't really talked about is that to that infrastructure point we alluded to earlier. While it's not the primary focus of the business, we do manage the billing and invoicing for all Priori engagements, which does enable smaller firms to reduce their rates through Priori, in part because billing and invoicing can just be such a cost center and a headache. And, we can attest to that, as in our first 10 hires at the company, we have someone whose sole job is billing and invoicing.
Yeah. And who are the attorneys who work through you? What do they look like?
There are a wide range of different kinds of attorneys in our network. We have everything from solo practitioners up to now attorneys at AmLaw 100 firms who are interested in using Priori to find clients for specific practice areas. We don't onboard the entire firm. We onboard on an individual attorney basis, but really across all the different types of attorneys who are on the platform, they're thinking about us as a business development channel. And so for some of those attorneys, we represent 100% of their work, and for others, based on their practice area and needs and geography and price, we are a way to get one matter a year. But all of those are useful use cases for the company.
Yeah. And where are you geographically? Where are your customers geographically?
They are global. The majority are in the United States. With, as you can probably imagine, concentrations in the major business centers. But we are also a way that global corporations have found U.S.-based counsel, as well as U.S.-based corporations have found global counsel. We're in all 50 states and 47 countries from an attorney network coverage perspective.
We talked earlier about the impact of the pandemic a little bit. We talked about the fact that you have seen some increase in your business because of it. Have you seen any impact from the pandemic on your customers? In that, have you seen any change in how they're using Priori Legal, or what kinds of matters they're coming to you with?
Yes, on a couple of different fronts. One thing that we've seen, and certainly not unique to us, is as there have been W-2 hiring freezes in all sorts of companies, there's been a need to use Priori for work that might historically merited the addition of a new full-time employee. The second thing is we have seen a surge in the need for employment counsel, as well as for litigators versus other practice areas. And that we've always seen some of that through the site, but it has certainly increased over the past 6 to 7 months.
Yeah. We've been seeing a lot of discussion over the last couple of years, and I think some evolution over the last couple of years over the whole concept of who is a legal services provider and who can provide what kinds of services. Certainly, with the significant growth in ALSPs over the last couple of years, more and more legal services are being provided by perhaps not directly by lawyers or by law firms. Is there a future in which Priori is providing access to legal professionals who are not lawyers?
We do already have some legal operations professionals and paralegals on the platform, but it is not a primary use case, and we don't intend to focus on that going forward.
Yeah. Turning back to the investment news today, what do you think? What did you hear from the investors? I mean, what interested them about your company? What's the value for them? What's the proposition for them?
Well, yeah, you'll have to ask some of them because I don't know that I know the answer. But what I would say is they really see that this moment of frothiness in the overall market, and particularly the marketplace for legal services, is a watershed that Priori is well positioned to take advantage of, to become the default way that outside counsel hiring decisions are made, and they see that as the potential to be $1 billion business.
Sounds good. All right. Anything else that you wanted to? Either of you wanted to mention, or why don't I let each of you just have a moment to offer your closing thoughts or your final thoughts before we wrap up. So, Basha, do you want to start?
Yeah, not to be too corny, but I just want to express my gratitude to the legal tech community to be such a supportive group of entrepreneurs and forward-thinking lawyers at law firms and corporations, and I think that community has been instrumental to our success and always been helpful to us in helping us think about new product features we want to launch and making introductions. And I think that not every industry has such a close community behind it. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for helping us reach this milestone.
Yeah, so I was going to go in a very similar direction. So just to build off that, I think, obviously the pandemic has been, for everybody incredibly, or for most people, I think, incredibly isolating, and has separated a lot of people from their communities. And we have just felt very thankful as we were working on the fundraise and getting into this next push that we are part of this extremely close legal tech community that has really helped us on sort of both personal and professional levels through this isolating time. And I also think that, we're excited to be part of this community for a lot of reasons, but also because, as much as lawyers get a bad rep for tech adoption, we have seen such rapid change, both in terms of people's capabilities from a tech perspective, but also their openness to thinking about new solutions and exploring new solutions, and not just on the in-house side, but really on the law firm side too. And so we've been very grateful for that involvement on a business and a product perspective, and are really excited to be working both with in-house departments and law firms going forward.
Basha and Mirra, congratulations on this news. It's pretty exciting, and I will be following with great interest to see what comes next for Priori Legal.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, Bob.
Well, that does it for today's show. We've been speaking with Basha Rubin and Mirra Levitt, the co-founders of Priori Legal, and a big thanks to both of them for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be with us. Thanks to Bob Ambrogi and his company Populous Radio for producing and editing today's show. And thanks to all of you for listening. Until next time, this is Bob Ambrogi.